Hi, I'm Renarta Clanton Moyd. I'm a communications specialist with the Cumberland County Schools and your host of Get Connected. During this monthly show, we highlight numerous educational topics that face today's student, educator, and parent in the Cumberland County Schools. Now, most would agree that a child is the most precious gift one can be given. But surprisingly, hundreds of thousands of children every year are being abused and exploited at the hands of adults. Even so, in our part of the world, efforts are being made through our schools and community agencies to help stop child abuse and exploitation. Now, after this break, we'll talk with some child advocate representatives about what's being done locally to prevent child abuse and exploitation during this edition of Get Connected.
Explore new worlds. Read. Visit literacy.gov.
In 4 out of 5 school shootings, the attacker tells someone about it first. Call 1-866-SPEAK-UP to report a weapon threat at school.
Again, thanks for joining us for this edition of Get Connected, where we're talking with Cumberland County Schools Executive Director of Student Services, Natasha Scott, and Pamela Story, the Coordinator of Social Work Services. Natasha, Pamela, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, we're here talking about some very serious stuff here.
Yes.
Child abuse and neglect. And both of you, as well as your department, really, you all are always out there on the front lines trying to make sure our young people are taken care of and those types of things. First question, if you suspect that a child is being abused or neglected, what should you do?
Ms. Story?
Okay. Well, in North Carolina, we are all mandated reporters. So in the school system, we have student services staff who are designated at each school as the primary point of contact, and generally that is the school social worker. So if the social worker or a school employee suspects child abuse or neglect, the social worker will talk with the child very briefly, not to investigate, but to get basic information so that a report can be filed with Cumberland County Department of Social Services. The key is that we want to ensure that children are safe, and we don't want them to feel guilty in any way. So the social worker usually will talk with the child in a confidential setting, in a calm manner, and reassure the child that we believe what they are saying, and then we make the report.
Okay, go right ahead.
I would just add to that, for people who are watching, if they know someone that they suspect is being abused, that telephone number for the Department of Social Services, or sometimes you'll hear it referred to as Child Protective Services or CPS, that is just a department within the Department of Social Services. But they could just call 910-677-2450.
Okay, and repeat that number again.
910-677-2450.
Now, you find in a lot of cases, or sometimes, parents tend to have that thought, well, oh, this person's a social worker. They're going to come and take my child.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case when you introduce yourself as a social worker.
Yes, and for school social workers, that's never the case. We don't take children out of home. Our role is to recognize and report child abuse and neglect. School social workers are the liaison between the home, the school, and the community. They are very well connected with the community. They know lots of community resources, how you access them, what type of paperwork is needed. So they do a lot of linking parents with resources. Sometimes it can be programs that we offer in the school or through the district office, but other times it may mean connecting them to something that's available available in the community. But as there are different types of social workers, but school social workers, we do not remove anyone's child from the home. That is the role of Child Protective Services, only under the direction of a judge.
Now, do you all investigate? Neglect or abuse? No.
We report, and it is the Department of Social Services' responsibility to investigate.
And I'm sure if you report it, you would definitely be reporting something where you saw substantial, or it's not unfounded. You know, you have some type of, not evidence, I don't want to say evidence, but some type of clear understanding that there is something going on.
We may or may not. It's not our role to judge or make a decision about it. As Ms. Story mentioned, we're mandated reporters, so all you need is a suspicion. The social workers at the Department of Social Services, they have received forensic training. And their forensic training is specifically for investigating child abuse and neglect cases. School social workers typically have not had that unless they were a prior CPS worker. But for the role of a school social worker, forensic training is not a part of that. So if we try to determine what we think is a good case and a bad case, we may actually not meet a child's need. So our goal is, when we see it and we suspect it, we call it in, and Child Protective Services and law enforcement. It's our role really to allow them to sort it out, and then we back up out of their investigation at that point.
Okay, that's good, that's good. Now, how many school social workers do we have in the Cumberland County school system?
Currently, we have 68 school social workers, and there is a school social worker assigned to every school, although at the elementary level, one social worker may cover 2 or more schools.
Okay.
At the middle and high, there's just the one social worker.
And if someone suspects abuse or neglect, should they contact you, or should they just go on and, you know, and I'm asking that because you just kind of want to, you know, as a parent, let's say for instance you see something on the school grounds between a child and the parent, and should they come to you, or should they just go on to?
In an instance like that, I would recommend that they actually contact the principal and make the principal aware of what they just saw happening on the school campus, and then the principal will work with the social worker or another student services personnel in order to make that phone call to Child Protective Services.
Now, is there a particular policy in the school system that governs child abuse and neglect?
There is. Our policy is in keeping with the general statutes, and it just indicates that if any school employee has a reason to suspect, that they must contact the Department of Social Services, and they are immune from any type of civil liability or prosecution as long as the report is made in good faith.
Good.
But it goes on to say, if you do not make that report, it's a misdemeanor. And so that kind of goes back to your question about school social workers trying to substantiate, so to speak, or having a good founded. The law requires us to report. If you see it and you suspect it, you report, and it's actually a misdemeanor for the North Carolina statute, as well as if you don't do it, then you're also not in compliance with the Cumberland County School Board policy as well. So there's lots of trouble that folks could get into, because the priority is always to keep kids safe, and so you err on the side of safety at all times.
And what I like about your department is, in our school system as a whole, we really strive to keep our young people, I want to call them little people, but we strive to keep them safe at all times.
Oh yes, definitely.
And with that, I know your department offers quite a few services to help assist parents, because sometimes I think abuse occurs because of the pressure or the stress that maybe a parent may be under, or what have you. But could you speak to that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so recently one of the things that we offered from April to May, we offered a 6-session class called Active Parenting of Teens. Now, this was actually a partnership with Communicare. It was completely free of charge for parents. It's a video-based curriculum where they're actually going to they actually took the parents through typical problems that teenagers occur, and then they're teaching parents the strategies for how to work with those problems. The key primarily being the communication. So the goal for parents is to try to maintain the kind of atmosphere that your children will always be willing to sit down and talk with you. If you can keep the communication open, parents can typically work through whatever their children are going through. But it's when you get to the point that you can't talk, folks are keeping secrets, and all that's happening is yelling, that's when parents get into trouble, because otherwise frustration rises when folks are really just doing the best that they can.
Yeah.
And I participated in that active training class, and it was excellent. And even though my children are grown, I wanted to be aware so that as a social worker and the social work coordinator, I could help enable others, you know, and parents when they come to us with these type of issues.
Right, yeah, because sometimes the pressures you experience as a parent, it's just a lot.
It is.
And you know, a lot of times we have to, as parents, leave whatever frustrations we have at the door.
Yes.
You know, these are gifts. As I mentioned in our intro, our little people are gifts to us.
They are.
And we have to treat them, you know, as such, even though sometimes they talk back and don't want to listen and those types of things.
Yes,
but
they do.
I think as a parent, and I have not, but I, you know, have not had the opportunity to attend the class, but I'm sure that active listening and those types of things, and you know, are I'm sure a part.
Knowing how to appropriately give consequences to your child, for example, that's very important. Just any tools that a parent can have to reduce the frustration. That's really when a parent gets to the point that they are actually abusing their child, they've just kind of lost it for a moment. All that talking back and doing stuff, parent has just kind of lost it for a moment, and we just want to build and increase those skills so that parents have a bigger toolkit so that when that frustration comes, you'll have a way to handle it.
That's good. Now, you know what, I know that April was Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month.
Yes.
And you all had a lot of great activities. I know of one, the Break the Chain event. That's always very successful. Tell everyone what that is about and how successful I know it was this year.
Miss Story and the social workers actually were presented with an award at that event, so I would like to defer to Miss Story to talk about the many events associated with Break the Chain.
Well, we are so proud that the school social workers received one of 3 Champion for Children awards sponsored by the Break the Chain committee, and that was because of the hard work that they do in helping to keep children safe in Cumberland County schools. So across the county, all kinds of activities were going on, but in collaboration with the Child Advocacy Center and other agencies, we did our annual Break the Chain of Child Abuse event, and that actually kicked off Child Abuse Prevention Month in Cumberland County.
Now, for someone who's never attended that particular event, tell them, what is the concept, breaking the chain? Talk to us.
Well, that's where school children come, and symbolically they make the paper chains at their schools, and they come and we stand together as a community and symbolically break the chains of abuse, child abuse in Cumberland County. And it's an exciting event. We have vendors there. This past year we had our Sergeant Mike puppet show, and the kids delighted in that. We also have local speakers, and it's just a time where we can all come together.
Good.
Now, also I want to share that the Child Advocacy Center as well as Cumberland County Schools hosted pinwheel planting ceremonies, and that's where we take the blue and silver pinwheel, which represents a better hope and a better life and future for children who have been abused and neglected, and we planted them outside of the Crown Expo Center following the event, and we also planted them at the Board of Education in some planters. So it was very beautiful, and at operations.
Well, that's nice. That is really nice. And when anyone drives by those areas, ding, little something should go off.
Yes.
To kind of help you think about that. Now, how can concerned citizens get involved with preventing child abuse and neglect?
One way they can do that, Ms. Story mentioned earlier that we partner with the Child Advocacy Center. They actually are a great partner of us. They sponsor what's called Darkness to Light, or Stewards of Children, which is a 2.5 to 3 hour course specifically on how to prevent child sexual abuse. And many of our school social workers, along with myself and Pamela Story, are trained to facilitate that class. It is completely free to the public. We arrange those classes along with people can call in and request a class. They can attend one through Cumberland County Schools, or they can attend one through the Child Advocacy Center, and we'll teach you the steps. You don't have to be a professional. Anyone can participate and prevent abuse in this county.
Now, are there any community resources that you could recommend?
Let's see. I would recommend Communicare. They are always a wonderful resource. They have within Communicare an agency called the Juvenile Assessment Center, and they offer case management services where they will work with students individually. They do some screening, case management type services.
Okay, all right. Well, you know what, ladies? It's time for us to take a break, okay?
Okay.
You stay put.
Okay.
Yeah, don't go anywhere.
We can't go?
You can't go.
Okay.
Pamela, I'm going to let you off the hook, okay? But I've enjoyed having you. Hopefully you'll come back another time, okay?
Thank you. I've enjoyed being here.
All right.
Thank
Well, you don't go anywhere. Stick around for more Get Connected.
What if a disaster strikes without warning? What if life as you know it has completely turned on its head? What if everything familiar becomes anything but? Before a disaster turns your family's world upside down, it's up to you to be ready. Get a kit, make a plan, be informed today. Learn how at ready.gov.
Take my hand and start a brand new day. And together as one we'll start to see some change.
Underneath everything we are, underneath everything we do, we are all people, connected, interdependent, united. And when we reach out a hand to one, we can influence the condition of all. That's what it means to live united.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Get Connected. And with us are Cumberland County Schools Executive Director of Student Services, Natasha Scott, and Roberta Humphries, the Executive Director of the Child Advocacy Center. Now, we're discussing what's being done locally to protect children and stop abuse as well as exploitation. Now, ladies, with that in mind, I want to kind of talk about sex trafficking.
Okay.
Talk to us, what is it, first of all? I mean, we know what it is, but tell us what, how you define it.
Okay, well, basically the official definition is the commercial sexual exploitation of a child, and if we're talking about domestic minor sex trafficking, it would be of a child under the age of 18. And it doesn't really have to require movement across any type of boundaries. It's basically that exploitation, and it can be for money or it can be for in-kind services, such as to pay the rent, for food. It's basically trading sex for some type of commercial product, basically.
Now, this surprises me. And I know you'll probably say, Renarta, you're a bit naive. But we have these types of things going on here in our community.
We do. One of the things that national statistics show, sorry, can we redo
That's
that?
all right.
Okay, one of the things that statistics show is that North Carolina is ranked in the top 10 for human trafficking, and it's because of things like the major highways that are in and out of our area. Having a large military presence can also be a draw for human trafficking, child sex trafficking. You also have in North Carolina all those eastern ports. You have lots of agricultural areas. So it's just, it's not that North Carolina is not a great state. I mean, it certainly is, but there are just certain circumstances that are tied to our area that make it the likelihood easier to happen here.
And I was just going to say, and just, I know you were kind of saying you were really shocked, but, just last year we had 4 documented cases of sex trafficking that we handled at the Child Advocacy Center, and those are just the ones that, fortunately we were able to find out about. The problem with it, especially with the under 18, is that's really kept hidden. It's not like you're going to see the girls walking the streets or things like that. They're really kept hidden. So it's really hard to uncover in many aspects. but the internet has just caused this issue to kind of proliferate in the community, because the kids can be traded, you know, through the internet, and the traffickers are so protected. You know, their anonymity is, you know, high because they can do it through the internet.
And like I said, I must be very naive, because in my mind too, I always looked at it as being an international issue, not so much a domestic issue.
I don't think that you're naive. I think you are like most members of our community. When you look at folks who are perpetuating, or these folks are traumatizing, tricking, and grooming children so that they will have access to them. It's meant to be an underground operation. So the whole purpose is that it's not going to be something that's going to be out front and right in your face. And that's what makes us having this opportunity to speak with you today so important, because it is an underground thing, and it is happening right in our faces, and we just don't, if you don't know the signs, then you don't know what you're looking at.
Okay, now let's talk about that, Natasha. What are the signs, and how do these perpetrators target children? I mean, what are they looking for?
Well, they're usually looking for children that are kind of on the fringe of, you know, in other words, they're not the ones that may be the most popular in school all the time. They're the ones that, a lot of times, they're the kids that are living in group homes, foster care. 70% of the children usually that are trafficked have had some previous form of trauma in their life, whether it's sexual abuse or physical abuse or some type of emotional abuse. So a lot of times these are children that have already experienced trauma, and they're looking for someone who's going to, you know, reach out to them. So they're more vulnerable to these people who are going to prey. They prey on children where children hang out. So they're going to be at your malls. A lot of times they have other people that they've already recruited who are then recruiting other children. So you'll find people recruiting in the middle schools, in the high schools. So they're out there looking for children. They're very savvy about, you know, targeting those children that are prime, you know, that would be good victims for them.
But then you also want to think about runaways, but then you can also think about students, young girls who are dating these older guys, and they perceive these people to be their boyfriend, and sometimes these boyfriends are really setting them up to be trafficked.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's so heartbreaking. And I'm sure we could say girls, but I'm sure boys are not exempt.
They are not. They are not. And sometimes I feel like our boys are more vulnerable than our girls. Roberta, you can chime in, but you know, if you think about society and a lot of the male machismo, and when guys have their first sexual encounter or someone approaches them, a lot of time our society will give them attaboys.
Yeah,
and I think it makes
kudos.
Kudos. You know, you're the man. And I think it makes it harder for boys to then speak up and ask for help when they need it. I mean, it just adds to that environment of children not being able to really speak up and tell a trusted adult when something is happening to them that should not be happening. So I tend to think that our boys, when you're talking about any type of sexual abuse, whether it's human trafficking or sexual abuse in general, I just tend to feel that they are underreported, and that we need to pay more attention to our boys.
Now, okay, go right ahead.
And I was going to say, and you see that also with the sentencing guidelines, if you have an older female perpetrator who has taken advantage of a young man, the chances of their sentence is going to be a lot less than if you have a male perpetrator who has sexually abused a female. And again, it goes back to that stereotype that Natasha was saying, where, you know, a lot of people will think, oh, you know, if you got this 13-year-old boy and he's had a sexual relationship with a 30-year-old woman, oh, good for him, you know, oh, he's, you know, he's great, you know. But if it was reversed and you've got that 30-year-old man who's having that sexual relationship with that 13-year-old girl, you know, society views it differently. And that's part of the problem too, I think, with the young men coming forward when they are sexually exploited.
Okay, now let me ask you this. When we hear this, and I think we kind of mentioned it just a little earlier, what signs should you be looking for in your child that would tip you off to the fact that they are being approached, they are a part of this? What signs?
Well, I would just mention, like Natasha said, first off, if you've got frequent runaways, a lot of times that, if they're breaking curfew, they're lying about their whereabouts, if you find, you know, this would be more obvious, but if you found like hotel keys or hotel, you know, cards or business cards to places where they shouldn't be, If you find them having, you know, excess money that they can't really explain where they're getting that money from, or if they've got that older boyfriend and all of a sudden he's buying them, you know, those nicer clothes, the pocketbooks, or for boys maybe the sneakers, or, you know, the nice jacket or things like that. Sometimes when you see them lying, you know, just kind of, which is hard sometimes because some of it can be typical, what we would call typical teenage behavior. So you really just have to be attuned, and I always say have that open dialogue with your children. Let them know that they can come and talk to you about anything that's going on. Because it is sometimes hard, you know, it's sometimes is confused with just what you might think, oh, they're just acting like a normal teenager, but you know, that may not be normal for them. Their grades start dropping, they're cutting classes at school, you might be getting truancy reports on them. So all of those are red flags that something might be going on.
Alcohol and substance abuse could be an example. And for people in the community, it may not be your child, but if you have homes in your neighborhood, for example, that have extreme security measures, bars on the window, surveillance cameras, those kind of barbed wire, those may be, these are generalizations, but that may a lot of frequent traffic coming in and out of a house. For people in the community that are watching and thinking, you kind of got that uh-oh feeling, something's not quite right. You know, even if it's not your child, you may be able to witness places, for example, where this could be occurring.
Okay, well, let me ask you all this. What should a parent do when you find out that might be the case with your particular child? What do you do?
Well, first off, obviously, you know, as best you can, you'd want to talk to the child, but you would also want to report that to law enforcement. What happened in one of the cases that we had was the pimp actually showed up at the family home demanding money from the family, saying that that child owed them money. They immediately called law enforcement, which got involved. You can call local law enforcement, you can call the FBI, and you have to realize that these traffickers are not nice people. So they have probably threatened that child, they've probably threatened the family. A lot of times in the movie that the school has put out there, Chosen, you can see where they have actually threatened the girl that if she doesn't participate, they'll go after her sister. So there's a lot of threats and violence involved in all of this sex trafficking as well.
Wow, this has just been eye-opening, and I'm so glad that our school system is on board in terms of, you know, having the program a couple of months ago about, you know, and showing that documentary Chosen to try to acquaint parents in the community with what's going on as far as the issue is concerned.
There's also a really good book that parents might want to read. It's called Renting Lacey, and that would be something that's really eye-opening.
Okay.
We actually gave out copies of Renting Lacey during the Chosen video that was shown at Douglasburg High School back on April the 10th.
Okay. Well, ladies, I tell you, I still have about 5 more questions that I want to ask you. I'll have to definitely have you all back, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank you so very much.
Okay, thank you.
Well, on behalf of the Cumberland County School System, we want to thank you for tuning in for this edition of our show and giving us a chance to help you get connected. Until next time.